Have you ever felt like you were sinking on the inside, while the world outside just keeps spinning, as if nothing's wrong? Sometimes chaos isn't found in wars or disasters, but in the quiet, personal tragedies we live through every day. Anxiety, rejection, failures no one sees. They slowly eat away at us in silence. But what if there were a philosophy made specifically for moments like these? Stoicism isn't some cold, distant theory. It's a quiet cry of resilience, a path to finding balance even when everything feels like it's falling apart. In this video, you'll discover how to apply the teachings of Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius to build inner peace, endure pain, and rise from your own ruins. Stick with me until the end, because this might just change the way you see life and your own pain. We live in an age where everything happens all at once. News, social media, fears, internal pressure. It all blends together like a storm inside us. The mind never shuts off. And with every notification comes a new expectation, a new comparison, a new reason to feel like we're not enough. Today, chaos doesn't come from the outside world. It lives within us. Anxiety has become the native language of a generation that no longer knows how to rest. We're always chasing something. The perfect body, career success, other people's approval. But the more we run, the farther peace seems to slip away. We're bombarded with noise, opinions, demands. And in the middle of all this, silence has become too heavy to bear. According to the World Health Organization, anxiety disorders have increased by more than 25% since the pandemic. That's no coincidence. It's a symptom of a system that constantly pushes us to the edge. A system that doesn't teach us how to stop, breathe, or reflect, only how to produce, compete, and survive. And the cruelest part? All of this happens while we smile for social media. South Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han describes today's world as a performance society. He says we're no longer oppressed by an external system, but by ourselves. We've become our own executioners, constantly pressuring ourselves, demanding perfection, punishing every flaw. The result? Emotional exhaustion, disguised as productivity. In this context, Stoicism shows up as a quiet act of resistance. While everything outside screams for us to be more, it gently whispers, be less, but be present. The Stoics lived through war, slavery, and loss, and still they found inner peace. What did they know that we've forgotten? Maybe the answer doesn't lie in chasing more stimulation or easy solutions. Maybe it's in learning how to look inward again. Because while the outside world may be out of our control, the inner world can still be tamed. But how? How do we find serenity when everything around us is pulling us toward the edge? That's what we'll explore in the next chapter. Most people hear the word philosophy and think of something distant, theoretical, disconnected from real life. But the Stoics were different. They spoke of pain because they had lived it. Epictetus was born a slave and spent much of his life with a crippled leg from being tortured, and yet he became one of the greatest thinkers in history. How was that even possible? Seneca, on the other hand, was a Roman politician constantly surrounded by conspiracies and death threats. Sentenced to die by suicide at the hands of the emperor, he wrote some of his most beautiful letters in the final moments of his life. Then there's Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the most powerful empire on earth, who faced illness, betrayal, and constant grief. Even so, he wrote Meditations, a deeply personal journal about how to keep the soul at peace in the middle of war. These men didn't talk about pain as something abstract. They were surrounded by it. War, loss, illness, abandonment, nothing was sugar-coated. And maybe that's why their words have lasted for centuries. They weren't trying to avoid suffering. They wanted to understand it, master it, and transform it, not with shallow self-help, but with discipline and living philosophy. What's most striking is that many Stoic writings were created during the worst moments of their lives. Epictetus kept teaching his students even when he was sick. Marcus Aurelius wrote at night, alone, exhausted after bloody battles, and still they wrote about virtue, calm, and acceptance. It's as if they had discovered a secret, one we've forgotten today. It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. This quote from Epictetus isn't just deep, it's liberating. It means pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Maybe the external world doesn't need to change for peace to begin. Maybe our perspective does. But is it really possible to change that perspective? Or are we doomed to repeat the same reactive patterns, the same painful cycles? The next chapter will reveal a simple yet powerful Stoic concept used to break free from inner anguish: the dichotomy of control. Imagine you're caught in the middle of a storm. You can scream, panic, curse the sky, but none of that will stop the rain. Stoicism begins right here, by realizing that some things are not, never were, and never will be within our control, and trying to control them is a guaranteed path to suffering. This is known as the dichotomy of control, one of the most powerful ideas in Stoic thought. It divides life into two parts: what depends on you and what doesn't. Sounds simple, but it changes everything, because most of our anxiety comes from trying to control the uncontrollable: the past, other people, death, time, unrequited love. Think about how many times you've hurt yourself trying to change someone's opinion, or waited for approval from someone who never cared, or tried to predict the future as if that were possible. Most people fall into this trap, placing their happiness in the hands of something they can never fully control. And then they wonder why they feel so powerless. Epictetus said, the key to freedom is understanding what is within your power. Your effort, your attitude, your values, these are yours to shape. But the rest? The outcome? What others feel, what life gives or takes away. That's like the wind. You can't control it, only adjust your sails. That's why the Stoics could remain calm even in times of war. They didn't deny pain, they just refused to let it rule their minds. They trained themselves to focus only on what they could control, and that made them unshakable on the inside. A silent, invisible strength, but absolutely unbreakable. What would your life look like if you stopped fighting the inevitable? But there's something even deeper behind all of this, because even when we focus on what we can control, pain still comes. And the Stoics knew that. They had a name for the process of using suffering as a tool to strengthen the soul. In the next chapter, we'll explore that quiet spiritual training they called the discipline of adversity. What if, instead of running from pain, you started to see it as a teacher? For the Stoics, suffering wasn't a punishment, it was spiritual training. They believed the soul grows stronger not in times of ease, but through the courageous facing of life's trials. Every loss, every rejection, every fall was a chance to sharpen the inner self. Marcus Aurelius, despite being an emperor, endured intense physical pain, the death of his children, and betrayals. And yet, instead of seeing himself as a victim, he wrote, "Adversity reveals genius, prosperity conceals it." That line, found in his personal journal, wasn't advice for others. It was a daily reminder to himself that pain could also be a path. The Stoics practiced something many still avoid today: voluntary exposure to discomfort. They slept on the floor, gave up luxuries, and meditated on death. Why? Because they knew life doesn't go easy on anyone, and the more prepared we are for discomfort, the less likely we are to panic when it inevitably arrives. They trained their minds the way soldiers train their bodies. This practice is called meditatio malorum, the meditation on misfortune. By imagining the worst, they paradoxically found peace, because fear loses its grip when we face it directly. It's like switching on a light in a dark room. Suddenly what seemed monstrous becomes just another part of being human. But perhaps the most powerful Stoic insight is this: pain is inevitable, but prolonged suffering is a choice. That may sound harsh, even cruel, until you understand the strength behind it. If you can change your relationship with pain, you can change your entire life. Pain can become the fuel for courage. And yet, one big question remains. How do we stay calm when everything around us keeps falling apart? How do we apply this philosophy not just in isolated moments, but in the real, chaotic, unpredictable flow of everyday life? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next chapter. How Stoicism can save a life, maybe even yours. Serenity, contrary to what many believe, isn't a gift reserved for monks or distant sages. It's a skill, and like any skill, it can be developed. The Stoics believed that peace doesn't come from the absence of chaos, but from the presence of clarity. Even in the middle of pain, it's possible to hold a steady center, like the eye of a hurricane. Real-life stories show how this plays out. A soldier in combat using Epictetus's teachings to endure the pressure. A mother who, after losing her child, finds comfort in the writings of Marcus Aurelius. A young person battling depression by practicing the emotional detachment proposed by Seneca. These aren't exceptions. They're quiet examples of how philosophy saves lives. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Auschwitz, once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." He wasn't a Stoic by name, but he lived its principles. Even in one of the worst human conditions imaginable, he discovered that we still have the freedom to choose how we respond. And that choice changes everything. The Stoics built daily rituals to remember this. They'd wake up and reflect, what could go wrong today? How will I respond? This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. They journaled, practiced inner silence, and observed their emotions without being carried away by them. They trained the mind like a warrior sharpens a blade before battle. Most people only seek help when they're already falling apart. But the Stoics taught how to build serenity before the pain arrives, because when it does, and it always does, you won't be at its mercy. You'll be ready, strong even in pieces, calm even while crying inside, aware even in despair. But there's one Stoic teaching that goes even deeper. It goes beyond endurance, beyond acceptance. It's a radical invitation to love whatever happens, even the pain. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the most challenging and perhaps most liberating concept in all of Stoic philosophy: Amor Fati. Could you love what broke you? Not just endure it, not just tolerate it, but truly love it. That's the raw and liberating challenge behind the concept of Amor Fati, which means love your fate. For the Stoics, and later for Nietzsche, who expanded on this idea, life isn't something to simply accept. It's something to embrace fully with all its pain, tragedies, and losses. To love your fate is to say yes, even to what shattered your heart. It's looking at the past with respect, even when it dragged you to your lowest point, because real strength comes from those who can transform pain into growth. In this mindset, suffering isn't a mistake. It's part of the design, part of what shapes us and reveals us. Nietzsche wrote, "My formula for human greatness is Amor Fati," not wanting anything to be different, not in the past, not in the future, not for all eternity. Imagine looking at your life, everything that went wrong, and being able to say, "Yes, I accept it all, because without it, I wouldn't be who I am." This kind of love for fate doesn't appear overnight. It's a process. It begins with acceptance, turns into understanding, and one day becomes gratitude when you look at your pain and realize it was a mirror. That it stopped you, made you reflect, showed you who you really are. Maybe, without it, you never would have woken up. But be careful, Amor Fati isn't about romanticizing suffering. It's about recognizing its role. It's understanding that, even though it hurts, pain can realign us with something deeper, with courage, compassion, and truth. It's when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this now?" So let me ask you, what pain in your life are you ready to love? What scar will you stop hiding and start honoring? Share your story in the comments, because maybe it didn't happen just to you. Maybe it happened to help someone else heal too. Stoicism isn't some distant theory or magical fix. It's a living philosophy, made for the days when everything feels lost, for the nights when your chest feels heavy and silence screams. It reminds us that pain is part of being human, but it doesn't have to be the center of our lives, that there is strength in controlling what we can and freedom in accepting what we can't. If there's one lesson to take from this video, it's this: you don't have to wait for the world to change to find peace. You can, right now, choose how to respond to chaos. You can choose to grow serenity instead of despair, courage instead of fear, clarity, even in the middle of the storm. You can start today. So tell me, which Stoic teaching spoke to you the most in this video? What part of your life is asking for that kind of serenity right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Let's build a space for reflection and support together. If this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who's fighting their own silent battle. You might just save a life with a simple click. And if you want to keep walking this path of deep reflection, click here for the next video. Because suffering doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of your transformation.